Hello, welcome into my training video on how to be a photojournalist in the modern age. My name is John Wilson. I am the chief photographer at KSL in Salt Lake City, Utah. I am a 42-time Emmy nominee, 16-time Emmy winner. I was the 2013 Central Region National Press Photographers Association Photographer of the Year. And what we're going to be talking about in this video is some techniques on things that you can do as a young photojournalist or one-man band to make your stories more compelling, more engaging, and more beneficial for your audience. In the process, it also helps you hone a skill set that makes you marketable in your future as a journalist and a storyteller.
You see how this is bringing it over, I'm putting it on the cradle.
The things we're going to be talking about in this video are things that you can do as a young journalist to make your work stand out from your peers.
Now I'm in good enough shape that I can do everything I need to do.
But overcoming hurdles is nothing new for him.
Come here, girls. Can you get back in bed and I'll give you your chocolate
These are skills that I've learned over a 15-year career as a photojournalist, starting in Market 62, Lexington, Kentucky, as a sports photographer, becoming an investigative producer, and then moving on to a chief photographer position in a top 30 market. These are techniques that anyone can do on a deadline crunch to make their stories stand out from their peers.
You have to know when you come to Jackson during the eclipse.
Look, I'm in the town square now.
They don't care down in town, it don't seem like.
Life appears in its simplest form.
One of the challenges that I face in a video like this is just the wide variety of gear that you're going to use as a photojournalist. You have smaller cameras like this small JVC that a lot of one-man bands use, GoPros, your cell phone. A lot of photojournalists shoot video now on smaller DSLR cameras. Then you have the full-size ENG cameras with the full lens, kind of like the camera I'm shooting this with, which is my full-size Sony electronic news gathering camera, XD-Cam PXW320. The trick for you really is all in the exposure. And what I'm going to do is take you outside and show you how to get proper exposure on your camera, regardless of what gear you're using filters, shutter, and the tools that your camera has that allows you to allow the right amount of light into the lens so that you can get proper video that pops off the screen. And that's one of the biggest things that's going to separate you from your peers. So I've moved outside, and right now you can see my shot is very overexposed. I'm on filter 1, no shutter. So I'm on my indoor filter. One of the things that a lot of entry-level photojournalists do is they just manipulate the iris to control the exposure. They don't pay attention to the filter or the shutter that they're using. So you see, if I come outside to shoot video and I'm just on the improper filter, it's going to be really hazy and the iris is going to be fighting to stay open. So the first thing I'm going to do is change filters. Filter 2, still when I move my iris to wide open, it's a little bit better when I get down to the proper exposure, but you can still see even on filter 2 that the shot is still pretty hazy. The lens is still struggling because of the amount of light going into it. So we're trying to block out more light. So I'm going to move to filter 3, a little bit better. Shot gets more crisp. I would even go to potentially filter 4 here, and then it looks really good. So the first thing I do on a shoot is set my exposure, filters and shutter. I'm going to move my iris to wide open. You still see, even on filter 4, the shot's hot with my iris wide open. I'm going to add some shutter. So there's one 250 shutter, there's one 500, one 1000, one 2000. And so on one 2000, that's a lot of shutter on filter 4. So at this point on filter 3, 2000 shutter, I have a pretty good exposure with my iris all the way wide open. I'm going to go down to where I normally shoot, which is one 500 shutter to one 1000 shutter on a bright sunny day like this. And then I'll go to filter 4. And that is a pretty good exposure. So it's all about the amount of light you're blocking from getting into your lens to allow yourself the most crisp shot. And let me show you the practical reality of this when you're talking about depth of field. So if I wanted to shoot that pickup truck on my proper exposure, I get a nice defined focus on the pickup truck in the background. If I wanted to focus on the tree in the foreground, you get a nice defined focus on the tree in the foreground. Now I'm going to go back to filter 1 with no shutter and just show you how my lens struggles to even get this shot if I don't have proper exposure. It's almost impossible to get. And this is something that a lot of young photojournalists struggle with, is just setting up their camera to get a proper exposure. So a lot of photojournalists come back with a lot of hazy, kind of soft looking video for this very reason, that you aren't shooting, or they'll come back with overexposed video for this very reason. And even if I go to filter 2 with no shutter, I'm still not getting that nice defined focus like I am when I go to the higher filter and add some shutter. So know your lens, know your camera. There are good YouTube tutorials on almost every camera that you'll use, but just know how to set it up so that you're allowing the right amount of light into the lens, and knowing that your goal is to have that iris as wide open as possible.
You know the feeling when you see them, but for everything you notice on the outside.
How you doing?
There you go.
But at this particular beach in Rio, people listen for something else.
Now that we've talked about exposure, we need to talk about composition. There really comes down to a few important techniques that I think are extremely important when we get into composition. The rule of thirds. You want to really have all of your primary focal points framed up on these lines.
And it makes a difference. The more people, the better.
He's a cattle rancher in the tiny community of Yost in Box Elder County.
We're a long ways from anywhere. It's the middle of nowhere.
Is this rocky one there? That's where she climbed up.
A good challenge for a trail runner like Don Rohde.
Now in charge of classes here at the Point.
Some special one's going to get us, so to keep the freedom and everything going for us and protect us. And
The rule of thirds can apply to every shot: tight shots, medium shots, and wide shots. Those are your 3 primary focal lengths that you're dealing with when you're shooting video. Most of the time, the person on camera isn't going to be addressing the camera directly. They're going to be talking to someone off camera, and it's really important that the eyes lead you into the open space in the frame. One of the big things I want to talk about is sequencing. That is one of the key things that separates a talented photojournalist from a standard run-of-the-mill photojournalist. This is taking an opportunity when you have repetitive action to get multiple angles and simulate that you are on a multi-camera shoot, using your one single camera to capture different angles, piece them together in editing, so that it appears that multiple cameras were on the shoot.
So that's why we're here, is to kind of educate.
People like Reagan Sharman
It's sort of my life.
are passionate about their work here.
Duck butts.
This is one of the techniques that we use in our storytelling to really make the stories pop compared to our competition.
So cute.
But sometimes the plans one makes can be lost in an instant.
Last year, January 25th, 2004.
Shot variety is one of the key things that you can do to really make your story stand out from your competitors. Multiple angles, wide, medium, tight.
A little more sizzle.
As Dan Preer begins another day
without shrill or harsh sound.
keeping the past alive.
Wide wides and tight tights to really showcase your variety of shots.
It's like, no, it's like 4 years ago.
Also in relation to that, I want to talk about interviews quickly. One of the big things I do with interviews is I reframe the shot constantly. I want wide shots, tight shots, medium shots.
Sergeant Robin Hayden says that new mother took a big risk.
Of course, you don't ever want to do
On
that.
every interview, I try to change the framing during the interview so that when I edit the sound bites together, I have different framing on all the different sound bites in the story. This creates the impression of multiple cameras on the shoot, which is the same thing that we're kind of creating with sequencing.
I do. I love it. It's so great.
It's very important to have this shot variety in your stories because that is what creates a nice, compelling, full picture of the scene that you're trying to illustrate. One of the things that tie into the rule of thirds and when we were talking about exposure is depth of field. That is one of the crucial things that I think that a talented photojournalist does. It's adding depth to your shot, putting things in the foreground, focusing on things in the background, focusing on things in the foreground with things in the background that you're trying to highlight. This is a technique that allows you to add that depth to your shot. Rather than shooting a flat image, a two-dimensional image, now you've created 3 dimensions to your frame, and this allows people to contextualize the scene much better.
Game changer.
Of sand.
Lay on it and soak up that vitamin D.
Right
The next thing I want to talk about is handheld versus on the tripod. When you have a moving subject like Crosby here, oftentimes you'll need to go handheld to really accurately highlight the story. But there are ways to incorrectly and correctly shoot handheld video. The correct way to shoot handheld video is to stay zoomed out all the way and remain close to your subject and follow the action. I started as a sports photographer, and as you can see in sports photography, most of it is handheld, and you have to shoot zoomed in a long way away. That's fine when you have a lot of motion like a football game, but as you can see now, when I am further away from Crosby, it's harder to hold a steady shot. You don't want to shoot static images handheld from far away.
And all these people are fighting.
You really want to use the handheld technique to follow action, and more importantly, use the handheld technique close up. Tight shots are another good example of this. You never want to zoom in handheld and get tight shots because you can't control the movement. Getting up really close handheld and using your macro. And now you see the difference. When I'm zoomed out completely wide, there isn't as much motion in the shot, and now this is a usable shot. Now I'm back on the tripod and you can see just how much better this is to get this shot. And the final important technique that I want to really highlight for composition is changing the eye level. Really moving your camera up and down while shooting. Not just side to side, but really changing the eye level of the viewer. Going from here, waist height, down to ground level, and really giving yourself a variety of shots to really add to the perspective of the scene. This technique will really allow your video to stand out. So again, these composition techniques, using the rule of thirds, sequencing your video, shot variety, getting wides, mediums, tights, super tights, when to use handheld technique versus when to be on the tripod, and changing the eye level. Good example of changing the eye level. If I'm shooting Larkin here, this is an okay shot, but a more effective shot is down here. Another thing that I do when I'm telling stories is I leave the wireless mic on the people we're telling the story about. Collect those natural, real moments and allow people to go on about their daily lives in front of you. That's what creates a realness and an authenticity to your work, and those are the things that when they show up in your stories will take you to the next level.
I heard
Sue.
the cops. I could hear them, yelling at somebody.
That brown one's doing her own thing.
When people say I can't do stuff, that really bugs me.
How much money we have!
That pain will always be there.
Gonna be better after your wife sees some flowers, right?
Got around the top of the hill. Coming this way.
Chemo has to work. It's in my liver.
This way. Oh, there you go.
Okay, Amara, I brought a whole crew.
You're gonna need a slotted spoon for the bean.
You gotta pull back.
People here
I know.
are preparing.
No, you gotta pull back further.
There's a lot of traffic around here.
I fell.
said like 50 to 60 feet vertically, that I started to hit rocks.
In Santa Quinn, Alex Cabrera,
Buenas noches,
KSL 5 News.
It's not just about composition and framing. It's about collecting the natural sounds of the environment you're shooting in. Now we're going to talk about some of those techniques to really create and collect compelling natural sound. Just listen to the difference between the on-camera shotgun mic compared to this microphone. Strategically placed lav mic. Don't forget your tight shot. And you've changed your eye level. Another really valuable tool for collecting natural sound on the fly is breakaway shotgun mic. It's very helpful for collecting natural sound when you're handheld on the move and you can get close to things that are making sound.
We're gonna bring our left leg out.
When it comes to editing, the biggest thing that I tell young photojournalists is know what you have to work with. That is one of the things that separates a talented deadline editor from someone who is just trying to make slot. The key to that for me is really in the logging process. If you're an MMJ, then of course you're sitting down to log your interviews. But one of the crucial things for a photojournalist who's telling the story with visuals is that you can sit and actually piece together your content, the natural sound, the moments, the shots that you definitely want to use. One of the things that I do in this situation is I go through all of my video, usually while my reporter is writing, but if I'm writing the story, I'll also do this too. I'll go through, find all of the shots that I definitely have to use, find all of the natural sound that I want to use, all of the meaningful moments that are on camera, and I'll bring them down onto the timeline, and I'll have them laid out on the timeline. This way, when I start piecing the story together structurally with my reporter track and with my B-roll, now I have all of these definite must-use things out to the side, and I can just slide them in quickly like I'm piecing together a puzzle. This technique allows me to really have the things that I know I want to use in the package right at hand. And that way, when I think I'm done editing, I now have, at the end of my sequence, the things that I thought that I was going to use. And I can quickly determine in that moment, do I want to put any of those moments in? Do I want to change any of the shots that I've laid out in my B-roll process? That way I can quickly glance and see what have I not used that I thought I was going to use at the beginning of the edit. This technique is crucial for me in not forgetting things that would make my story better. This, on a deadline situation, is very important because when you're crunched and you're down to 10, 15 minutes before air, it is really difficult to go back and scrub through a lot of raw video looking for specific shots or specific nat sound. This process to me is the main key in piecing together strong stories in the edit, especially in deadline situations. To wrap this all up, I want to show you one of my favorite stories that I've done on deadline called Mom's Cafe. It was done with reporter Alex Cabrera using all of these same techniques that you've learned here today. It was honored nationally by the National Press Photographers Association for Deadline News and regionally, and it won the Emmy for General Assignment Reporting.
Excuse me, Ronnie. Mom's Cafe in Salina.
Yeah, but these guys are regulars over here.
Is one of those places
Get over here, Lisa.
people just know.
Do you want something to eat?
Celebrities have eaten here.
It's been here forever.
National publications too.
There's lots of people all the time. Lots of new people.
It's more of the feel of the place that really makes Mom's popular.
You get to know them even if they're not from here.
Oh, and the kind of cooking tough to find these days.
And that's the thing, you don't get down home cooking every...
No.
Yeah, empty stomachs have never left disappointed.
And he'd come here every night in the 70s.
Ever.
Yeah.
But for all the history people love here at Mom's Cafe, it's hard to ignore its most recent history.
We had about an hour left of our shift.
Yeah, it was on Facebook fast.
This past Sunday, a driver in too much of a hurry.
Hand me some more napkins, please.
Let's just say it was a good thing Mom's was slow that day.
She looked at the window, looked back, and then it hit,
This is surveillance video of the crash.
How did he scale that window like that?
One of the workers, Candace Paxman, was in that very spot at the register
I like how you pulled up your britches though right before.
just a few seconds before.
Then you heard this big boom and then all the glass broke.
No one knows exactly why the driver lost control, but almost right away, people came to help.
Community getting the boards up right away, cleaning up everything out front and in here.
Because we're close knit.
Mom's was closed for a day thanks to all that help.
High community, huh?
Maybe folks just wanted it opened back up fast.
It'll always be open.
Because the Tuesday special is always delicious.
Could have been golden.
Or maybe because that's just what people here do.
It does. You don't even know and they still come and help, you know, that's what kind of community it is.
Giving old-timers and newcomers more history to talk about. In Salina, Alex Cabrero, KSL 5 News.
So there it is, Mom's Cafe, one of my favorite stories that I've been able to tell, and it was on a tight deadline. I was actually editing in the back seat while Alex drove to get that story on the air in time. Using these techniques that I've shown you here today, composition, exposure, depth of field, sequencing, natural sound and moments, those are the key elements to telling good stories, and they are elements that you can gather on deadline and showcase to your viewers. Video storytelling, it's a great career regardless of what your platform is, whether it's online or on air. Video storytelling is one of the most beautiful art forms out there. Go out, meet engaging characters, tell their stories,